Hey, this is Jordan from Avid here at NAB 2019. We just heard a presentation from the sound team behind the Oscar-winning Bohemian Rhapsody. I've got Nina Hartstone, John Warhurst, and Paul Massey here. Thank you guys so much for being presenters. This is just absolutely amazing to see behind the scenes of really how you put together such an amazing film. I wanted to know, you've obviously all worked on lots of films. Is there a different appeal to something like this that has the music is so integral to it, and as a sound team to have a film that's got that reliance on the music? Is it more of a draw to do something like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When we first started on this film, we all sort of said, well, this film's definitely going to have a great soundtrack. We know that. We've got that down. So, but working on a film like this was incredible. It really was, especially with the music of Queen, you know, and to get to work with the band as well. I mean, that was kind of a career highlight, really.
Is there an intimidation at all to having to recreate something with such an iconic band that, you know, you've got Brian in there looking over your shoulder? Is there something that feels a little scarier about this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was wonderful to work with Brian May and Roger Taylor, and we also had access to everything in a multi-track format from all of their archive recordings of live and in studio. So I think the terror factor was probably like, don't mess this up, because this is such an iconic band, such an iconic sound, and in remixing all of these songs, truly, don't mess it up. That was my fear.
You know, you guys talked about a lot of the different challenges you had with creating the performances, and fortunately being able to record a live performance. Did you go about those scenes first because you knew they were going to be more challenging, or I don't know what your process is for how you start going through it?
I'd say we knew that anytime you start on a movie and you kind of look through it and you identify the scenes that you're going to have to go the extra mile, or you're going to have to sort of think a little bit outside of the box of how to get the best audio for it and how to make it sound as good as it possibly can be. And as John has said, we always try and get bespoke sound for our films. So it's about thinking about how we can go out and record the things that we needed for this movie. And we were incredibly fortunate, and the cards laid well, and we managed to get all sorts of exciting things recorded for it.
You were actually talking in the presentation about when you took the group of 40 people singing along for the concert and paring it down, and that you didn't want to do it in the studio, you wanted to take them outside. With a film like this, where you are trying to recreate something like that, how much do you know ahead of time, like, I don't want this in a studio, it's going to be outside, this is going to sound wrong, this is going to sound right? Like, how much trial and error are you like, that's just not working, like with the claps and everything? How much goes into that?
Well, we wanted to make this film sound like for the audience that they were really there, especially in the Live Aid sequences and the concert sequences. The audience had to 100% believe that they were at that concert watching the band playing. Had to be in sync, it had to sound good, it had to have the right perspectives. And I think as the film mix and editorial evolved, we discovered what we really wanted to get in terms of true acoustic recordings of stadiums, true control over singing, over hand claps and everything. And as our ideas evolved throughout the months leading up to the mix, we wanted it became very clear that we wanted the very, very best for all of these scenes. And that the audience could never not believe that they weren't really there.
So if you guys had some advice for new sound mixers, new anyone wanting to get into film sound, what would be your best tip?
I would certainly say anyone who's keen to get into it, you've just got to try and be as persistent as you can. Grasp every opportunity with both hands, find out other people. It's so easy to make a movie these days. When I was growing up, we didn't have smartphones, you couldn't just start filming something. Films are all stories, so find people who are making short films and get involved with those. Get as much experience as you can, collaborate with other people, and just learn the process.
Anything to add? Anything to add?
Well, the same thing, really. You know, the most important thing is to listen to as many films as possible, and to really sort of try and understand how the films put together. And actually, when you the more films you listen to, the more you can kind of work things out for yourself. There's a lot of articles out there now as well, which I always remember when I sort of got going as well. I mean, the internet wasn't really invented at that stage, and it was such a dark art. It really was. I mean, like recording studios, films, you know, mixing studios. It was a real dark art. Whereas there's so much information now about there now. You can really sort of do a lot of research, and some great courses as well.
You said, Paul, that you started as a recording mixer, but then switched over to film. What made you do the switch?
Well, my career started way back in the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. And so my passion was music and music recording. I played instruments as well, and I wanted to follow that passion, so I did. And then unfortunately the music industry took a little bit of a downturn in the late 80s, early 90s. And so the studio I was working at the time decided to get into TV post-production and then evolved into film post-production. And it wasn't even something I had planned out. It was just purely coincidence that I was there at the time, and I said, well, I know sound, I don't know the language of film, I'll learn it. I'm just going to say yes and do it.
Do you like one better than the other?
I love mixing for film, but I love mixing music for film the most. That is my, if I could do that for the rest of my days, I'd be very, very happy.
What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful challenge actually on this film to get involved with editing vocals and learning more about music. I don't have a particular musical background, so it's wonderful at this stage of my career to still be learning and still be getting new skills and keeping everything interesting. Really, when you're doing working job after job after job, this was a golden opportunity. It felt like for me.
And John, how did you first start?
Well, a similar sort of background to Paul. I come from a music background. I was always doing music work. I studied music and worked in film doing music. But the more films I did, the more I started to understand the whole of the soundtrack of the film as well, and was sort of interested in the way that all soundtracks get put together. The way it's a balance between the dialogue, the effects, music, all the different elements. But I love working on music films, on music-driven films. I'll always try and hunt out any new music film that's being made and work on musical films. Yeah.
So one last thing, I do of course have to mention Pro Tools, which you're all very familiar with. Working on any film, but this film especially, there's obviously a huge team working together. You're all collaborating, you're all putting different pieces in. How does Pro Tools make that easier for all of you to work together?
I mean, obviously, Pro Tools is the thing that binds us all. That's from music, that's from film, post-production, right the way across. A Pro Tools session now is probably the most standard format that you can work around the world with. You can send each other Pro Tools sessions. Just the way that it's sort of evolved, and the way you can now do a lot of things sort of virtually and keep it live makes certainly filmmaking a lot more flexible. Whilst they recut the picture, you can keep the sound and the music up to speed with any new changes that are happening. No, it's essential. It's an essential part of filmmaking.
This is Jordan from Avid. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and everybody at home, and to present here at our booth. We're on the South Upper Hall, booth 801. If you missed this presentation, get back down here. We've got a lot more to go today, tomorrow, the rest of the time. Thank you, Paul Massey, John Warhurst, and Nina Hartstone, the team behind Bohemian Rhapsody.